back. All signs
point to yes.
to us being back. Let me list it real quick.
Signs
Hello.
point to yes.
To us being back. Oh, what a time to be alive.
Hooray.
Guys, I think it's fixed.
Are we
and
functioning?
Thank God. For those of you listening to the podcast later, our first take was less than ideal. I'm trying to be just a little bit gentle because of a sleeping dog. And as they say, you must let sleeping dogs lie. And you have to take advantage of these moments. Really soak it in to have a conversation with your friends. This is Around the Hearth, the tabletop RPG talk show where I sit down with my besties and chat about a different topic every single week from the tabletop world. And yeah, I'm Ann Richmond, aka Hearth Singer, the head bard in charge. I'm joined by
Chris.
One of you go.
Hi.
Chris. Chris.
I was trying to not take up space. Remember?
I
the
looked
theme.
at you. I gave you your cue.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I am Chris. What's up? Hi.
Cool. What's up, man? And
Hi.
also,
I'm Emily. The other one.
I didn't cue her.
10 out of 10. It's a 10 out of 10. Okay, amazing. So how's everybody doing this week? Just as a quick catch up, because it's been. Thanks, N7. I'm so glad. Thank you for sticking with us. And our audio woes. Super appreciate that. It's been a hot second since we've gathered in these hallowed halls. For the last 2 weeks, Chris and I ran a one-on-one shot, which is really a two-shot. That seems like a million years ago. That seems like a different
Literally,
person.
you said that, and I was all like, "Wasn't that like last year sometime?" Yeah, I that literally feels like a million years, like 2 months ago.
Yeah.
But alas, it was a lot of fun. Y'all should subscribe to the Patreon and play.
Subscribe.
Because the Sunlit Seekers is dope. It was way. I was humbled by how good that was.
Oh, that's really sweet.
Yeah.
Because I look up to you a lot, and it's fine, and I won't cry. I'm emotionally unstable right now.
I have a child. You can't just say things to me.
You can't just say things like that. Thank you so much for your subscription, Know It All, and Emily the Spoon.
13 months running.
I know.
also
look at that.
subscribed.
Lucky a 13. Did you?
I did.
Well, yeah, but you didn't do the thing where you share it and tell everybody that you did it.
Sorry. I'll do that, I guess.
I did it. And thank you, Christopher, for subscribing to your own show.
How dare you? It was free, if that makes you feel any better.
So I have a dog now. That's what I've been doing this week. He's having a dream right now, so his little leg is like moving. I'd show you, but then I would have to kill you.
Start the whole stream over.
Yeah, I'm sure that he will be available for viewing upon a different stream. But if you're curious, there are tons of pictures on the Discord.
Subscribe to our Patreon, and you'll get exclusive dog photos.
Yeah, I do need to make that post. I haven't done it yet. But yeah, my entire week has been thrown into like the ups, the downs, the emotional fatigue of trying to live with a dog and a cat and a baby dog who's like 9 weeks old. When I tell you I saw this dog and he was so tiny, I just had no idea he was going to be that small. And that's when I was like, oh my God, I love you so much, but I'm saddled with so much responsibility. Like this dog is not going to be able to go up and down stairs. Like so many things like hit me all at once in that moment. But like it's been a real challenge just in the couple of days, and it's been really fatiguing. And every day is kind of better than the last. And the thing that like people say about dog training is consistency, but you can always set a new consistency. And what I love about dog training is that you can always do better, and you can in fact teach an old dog new tricks. And if you messed something up, you can try again and see real results. And that is also what I like about dungeon mastering with the right people. Hell of a seg into today's topic. Teaching D&D, training people to play D&D in a sense is really intimidating. And learning it when you're handed, like I wrote in my notes, 3 separate books, but it's way more than that, and told to make a character and like just figure it out, even if somebody is helping you, that's really overwhelming. And luckily there are tons of people like myself who make cool YouTube videos that might help you through certain aspects of it. But ultimately it's just, it's full of feature fatigue. And so Chris was actually the one who decided we should talk about that this week. And I had never heard that term. Where does that term come from, Chris?
I mean, I first learned of it. I don't know its origins, but I first learned of it mostly in reference to video games. And primarily people talk about it with like MMOs or games that have like too many expansions. And it's basically the concept of when you're trying to enter into a new game world, whether it be a tabletop RPG or a video game, where there's so many systems and features and options that it is overwhelming for a new player. You know, think about Dungeons and Dragons, well, 5th edition when it first came out. We had 3 books. You had the Player's Handbook, Monster Manual, and Dungeon Master's Guide. Everyone had a book that they needed to look at for the information, and those were all your options right there. But now there's, what, like 24 books more? I don't even know. Like, I can't even keep track of how many books there are. And each one adds more options. And so now to be fully informed of all of your options in the game now is a Herculean task if you haven't been keeping up. You know, like reading the next chapter that comes out is not difficult if you've read all of them up to that point, but catching up on 8 seasons of a television show that you've never seen before can be a very daunting task. So that's basically what it is, where there's just so many systems that you can't possibly understand all of them well enough to enjoy the game to its fullest.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I remember.
I definitely feel that as a dungeon master too, which when I was thinking about this earlier, I was thinking about it mostly from the point of view of being a player. But sometimes, like, with, you know, all the unearthed arcana that comes out and like all this stuff, and then you have people asking like, do you run Adventurers League games, or do you do this, or do you do that? And I was like, I know so much about Dungeons and Dragons, but there's a vast ocean of knowledge that I don't have. And I think we're kind of set up in a world where people kind of test people on their level of knowledge. Yeah,
I was literally just going to say, and then the problem is that you play with strangers who may or may not gatekeep you by being like, well, you forgot this one rule and you don't know every rule forwards and back, so you were invalidated. And that is the hard thing to deal with.
Totally. Yeah. Know-it-all Psy Guy in chat says, we all can't be know-it-alls. It's true. And even know-it-all doesn't know it all.
It's true.
Dun, dun, dun. Shots fired. No, but Emily, you manage a team at Roll20. You are the director of licensing over there. And not only do you deal with a ton of licenses for all sorts of games, but you play a bunch of systems, some of them live. So how have you worked to overcome feature fatigue as a player who's taking on not just one system, but many? Because I think a lot of people are like scared to jump ship because of that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the challenges that we constantly kind of, or that the gaming industry, the tabletop industry specifically, constantly faces is there's a lot of great systems out there and great stories to be told out there, but I think the fear of being overwhelmed by new rules and new features keeps people from trying these. One of the trends we've been talking about a lot at my job recently is the phenomenon of like folks pledging for a Kickstarter, for example, for a game that they're very excited to support, and how crowdfunding gives you that opportunity to literally shower a creator or a new publisher with love over the concept behind their game or just the excitement of its potential existence. But does that translate into people actually interacting with the game or playing the rules?
Sure.
And I think this is a great example of how people's perception of the feature fatigue can keep them away from actually just experiencing something that relieves the feature fatigue of other games. Because as you're expressing before, like D&D is so many people's intro to tabletop gaming. It's definitely the one of the most approachable and well-known ways to get into TTRPGs. But there are so many systems that are features light or story heavy, rules light, or, you know, just a completely different experience that can be an intro to tabletop gaming if you get past the fact that it's not the number one RPG in the world. You know, like if you let yourself acknowledge the fact that learning these 3 new features is actually going to be easier than approaching a title that's got, by my count, like on this bookshelf, at least 10 or 11 books like that, it's helpful to have just to get started. So I don't know if that's answering your question really, but I think that like in a lot of cases, the perception of feature fatigue prevents us from trying something more so than the feature fatigue itself. And there's definitely game systems out there that are more complicated than 5th edition. And if like crunchiness is your thing, then like those exist for you to try. But I don't think that feature fatigue is a conversation that's keeping someone who's into crunchy rules from trying a new thing. I think for people who are a bit intimidated by like how much content there is for D&D, or the concept of rules interacting. Ooh, I did a little slide over.
Don't worry about it. Don't think about it. Just keep talking.
I think that for people for whom the concept of either a lot of books or a lot of new rules keeps them from trying something new, should dip their toes into like looking into systems that are very rules light, or that are a storytelling intensive as opposed to rules intensive experience, because that can feel very rewarding and freeing to try that out instead of dedicating yourself to volumes and volumes of rule books that have existed for how long has 5th edition been out now?
Like 10 years.
I was gonna say like 10 years. I think we're coming
Jesus
up on.
Christ. So time for 6E. But I think one of the things that we learned really early on in our friend group is that rules light system and light prep can be so fun. Running games of like Dread on New Year's Eve and Halloween, and like these systems are, we've told some really incredible stories like with very little prep, and I love that. I love systems also like why can't I say I almost said Blackout Club. Jesus Christ,
Lady Blackbird.
I'm so tired.
Are you gonna be okay? Yeah.
I'm so tired, you guys. No, but yes. Lady Blackbird is one of them, but I also meant 10 Candles. Yeah, there we go. These are all games that kind of allow you to pick up and go right away and really address the core fundamentals of how to play a role-playing game, like the role-playing aspect of it, rather than, you know, the crunchiness of a system and combat action economy and stuff like that. And both are totally valid, right? But I think sometimes you become a better listener, and all those other things we talk about on these other episodes of this show that we've done. You become more able to listen when you're less bogged down in just fluffy rules, I guess. Do you guys have any thoughts about that?
I was going to say that just while I'm thinking about this element of it, something that I find a lot of new players struggle with is, especially when they're mixed with veteran players, is they're terrified to make the wrong choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is a game where ostensibly there isn't a wrong choice. You know, like whatever you choose to be your fun is correct. But the thing is that especially when it's new player, it's like, okay, here are all of your options, and they're like, okay, well, what's the best option? You know, or something like that, or you limit their options, and then sometimes you can get some pushback. Because they're just like, well, what if I don't want to be any of these things, or something like that. I can segue that into another point, but yeah, that.
What's the other point?
No, just like how you, the way I always approach that kind of situation is that it's not like creating a character in a video game or something where you pick the wrong class and then if you need to and then you have to re-roll or whatever. It's like, it's a game that exists in our imagination, and there are rules that bind that reality together. But I've had characters that they realized somewhere down the road that they wanted to be a different class. So I allowed them to have a character moment where they transitioned or something like that. And that was a big part of it. I also have a tendency to slowly introduce people to more options, or ask them what they want without knowing what any of the options are. And then I can then present to them, that can then present suggestions based on my knowledge that I've worked up.
And I will say, I think one of the things that freaked me out as a player coming in was well, I want to be happy with this, because sometimes you play a campaign for 2 months and sometimes you play it for 2 years. So like, what if I pick the wrong thing and then I'm unhappy forever? And so I think it's really helpful to present options to somebody and be like, if you're new and this is a lot for you, like you say, either choose some things for them based on what they want, but also just say, hey, make something out of the player's handbook. Just do that. And if in 3 levels you don't like it, or you want to do a different subclass, than you had planned, then we'll open it up to more stuff.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be married to this thing. We don't have to restart the game if you decide you don't like it. And just kind of letting people let go of that assumption that once they make a choice, they're locked into it forever, I think is.
I've also found that just giving someone the option, like, here's the player's handbook, make a character, that can also be very telling, where like, as they go through the process and sort of explain their thought process to you, you can be like, well, you know what, you're going down this road and this option isn't in the player's handbook, but it is over here. Is that more what you're looking for? You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that I wanted to kind of chat about is the fact that I think a lot of games get bogged down, or GMs in particular get bogged down by having to explain an entire system. And a lot of times we fail at explaining the system the first time because it's just a lot. It's a lot to know how to teach. It's a lot to just like know how to teach as a person, and not every GM is gonna like come naturally upon that skill. And I think a lot of people give up if they have a negative experience the first time trying to get people going in the game, or answer questions about combat or all that stuff. So I know, Chris, you've probably GM'd aside from me, like I think you probably have GM'd more than me, honestly. So what do you do when you feel like you failed at like tamping down on the feature fatigue for people, and how have you changed your approach since that failure, I guess?
Yeah, like the moment that always sticks in my head is, it was one time, this was back when we were played 3.5, and this was like late in the life cycle of 3.5. So the amount of information for that game was vast, a vast ocean of options and content and math and just so much. But anyway, and I remember I was trying to give people new into the game, and this was some of my first times GMing, and as someone who likes to like hit down into the nitty-gritty of all my options and pick out all that kind of stuff, I went online, and I didn't own all the books, so I went to like some databases online, and I printed out like these giant spreadsheets of like, here are all your options, and then a blurb about it. And I remember I printed out all of the feats that were available in 3.5 at the end of the life cycle, and it was like 35 pages. I think that might have been actually low. It was like a book. And I just walked in, and this is a brand new player, and I'm like, here you go. I was like, well, now it's time to pick your feats. You get to pick 3. And it just drops a tome in front of them. And
I think because of that is why I still don't look at feats to this day, because I'm like forever scarred by that.
Yeah, it was literally everyone that I presented with in 3.5, everyone that I presented with all of the options was instantly repulsed. Because they're just like, I don't even know what this means. You're gonna have to explain every single one of those. I don't want to take advanced calculus. I just want to play Dungeons and Dragons. So that honestly was like my first misstep, when in my excitement to be over prepared, I essentially terrified my players. And so basically,
how have you changed?
Yeah, basically what I've done is that most of the time when I have brand new players, I get an idea of, I was like, okay, so you want to play Dungeons and Dragons, so you're into some amount of nerdy pop culture, regardless of what it is. Tell me what like your favorite like fantasy thing or fantasy analog is. What is your dream? What is the dream? What do you love? And who's your favorite character? If you could self-insert anybody, like Lord of the Rings, whatever, who would you be? And everyone's like, Aragorn. And I was like, okay, that's all I need to know. Or like, what do you want to do? Do you want to shoot? Do you want to sling spells? Do you want to be up close and personal? Do you want to be sneaky? Like, I basically just break everything down into subcategories, and I go through a flow chart essentially to crystallize the idea of like what their power fantasy is, what their fantasy version of themselves is, and then I basically cherry pick options based on that. And if they like things, I basically just continue to add on based on their level of excitement. But if they're like, that's good, that's all I want, I'm like, cool, we're done. Like there's literally no other reason to look at it. Like that's it. You already have your character.
It can be so overwhelming. I'd rather, I feel like people have a finite, I've been onboarding for a new job, and I have to do all these like training modules, and we had a conversation today about like mental fatigue of like if you're only using the creative side of your brain or only using like the right side of your brain, like if you don't have a mixture of those two things, you can get fatigued really, really fast. And for me, like I'm working with like strings of code and like querying arrays from databases and like stuff like that, and that is just not my world. And so we talked about the importance of like of mixing it up, and I think that's really applicable here, of like creating that flow chart like you said, but then also saying like, you know, figuring out what kind of person this person is. Are they someone who wants to do the most damage they could possibly do? Like, how can I give you the crunch you're looking for? Are you someone who wants a bunch of rerolls? Like, you know, all that stuff is figuring out how that person wants to use their brain at the table. Because I know that if I sat there and had to just, one of the reasons I don't play rogues is I feel like there's so many situational bonuses. Rogues and barbarians have that, I feel.
Yeah.
And so I just don't tend to play them because my brain is not, it's just not ready for that.
Yeah, that was like my biggest problem with like 3.5 is it was all like, okay, here's the math. It's like, cool, I learned the math on how my character works. It's like, yes, but every time you do the math, it'll be a little different. Yeah. Depending on like, I don't know, whether or not you're standing on your tippy toes or not. Like there's so much nonsense.
Yes, the tippy toe rule.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're not on your tippy toes, you're flat footed. So, and then you don't get your dex to AC. But anyway.
Yeah, the idea that Matt said in chat, imagine one awesome moment that you see your character doing, and work backwards from that, I think is cute.
Yeah, no.
And I think also in taking those and like distilling character building, and distilling the features into those more accessible packages, it's really up to the player at that point, depending on how deep they get into the rules of the game, to take that and then expand upon it, or to stay in that kind of distilled state. Like I know we play, you know, I'll call her out because I know if she were here, she wouldn't mind, but we play with Dana, who is really more in it for the hanging out with her friends than she is for the playing D&D, right? And so with this being her first TTRPG experience, really, Chris just kind of sat down and built a character out with her in the same way, like really holding back a lot of the features from her and just being like giving her a quiz of like, what is the fantasy version of your character, and okay, here's what that looks like in D&D terms. And for her, staying in that state of like not expanding upon the rules is she's basically been gifted a character that she gets to take into the games, and then she is not overwhelmed. She doesn't have too much to try to keep track of. She's there for the role playing and having fun in the combat and being at a table with her friends, which is like, really, isn't that what it's all about? And then like for me, like I sit somewhere in the middle of like, you know, I like famously get feature fatigued like constantly, and so like I'll play spellcasters that are supposed to pick their spells daily, and I'll like keep the same spells for the entire time we're playing the campaign.
I love clerics, but I don't like picking spells.
It's true. So you know, like I can shift a little bit depending on what I know we need, but honestly for me, I'd rather not have to worry about that, you know, micromanagement aspect of it.
Meanwhile, I'm like, oh my god, how many spells should I go through to like deal with this exact day? Like it just depends on the person.
Exactly. Right? That's exactly what I was gonna say. Like meanwhile, you've got people like Anne or like Tanya who like when got basically started out at D&D around the same time as me, for example, but got so much more into the rules aspect of it and have fun with really diving into the nitty gritty, and that was a journey they were able to take on their own.
Yeah, like I'm probably going to need purify food and water today. Yeah.
Yeah, like I like having the option. I don't always change stuff, right? And there are definitely days where, you know, we've talked about mental health and RPGs. Like if your game with your friends is going to make you more mentally fatigued than you're prepared to be for whatever reason, like it's totally okay to just not change your spells that day. You know what I mean? Like, just live your best life, or to not play if you're just not feeling it. But I think one of the things I just wanted to sort of wrap this up with is that it is okay to present limitations to your players. Yes, you want to give them the world and you want to set them up to have the most fun possible, but I think it's really important to understand that, like, when you're giving somebody a framework to work within, sometimes that's what they need to excel in their, like, new understanding of the game. So giving people pre-rolled characters from the website, pre-rolling for them, and then letting them spend, like, you only have so much brain economy per day. Like, you have so many spoons to give for whatever you're doing. And so if you or they have given you the opinion, the indication that they're going to be super feature fatigued by everything, like, it's totally okay to just chill and help them through it and give them something they can jump off of. And I think, you know, a lot of DMs don't do that because they're afraid of being like the iron fist. But I think personally, I think as long as you're saying, here, I'm going to give you this because it seems to be, based on what you've said, it seems to be what you want. If you hate it, we'll do something else. You know, just give people the sense that they're not entering a lifetime commitment to a particular character. Well, guys, I know it's been short, but it's going to be short and sweet because I don't want my dog to pee on the floor. These are the new rules of my life. But I did want to take some time and say thank you so much to everybody for letting us know at the beginning of the show that we had some audio issues. I know this is a bit of a shorter episode. We will likely be going back to going live at 6 on Fridays, but play it by ear. Of course, the best time to know when we're going live is to be on the Discord. And the best place to view VODs afterwards is always going to be YouTube. There's chat over there, and I'm sorry if I ignored it today, YouTube. I do apologize.
She's a dog mom now. She's got a lot on her plate.
It's true.
7 hours of sleep across the last 2 days. So I'm like literally sitting here getting the chills. I straight up dissociated for about 10 minutes right before we went live. So it's going great. It is going great, but it's very, very, very tiring. So we're gonna work around this puppy's bladder schedule for the next little bit, and we're just gonna do our best, kids. We're gonna do our best.
Samwise is worth it.
He is worth it, and I totally want to show him, but I just can't. I want to. I was gonna say Emily, but then you told me you're not playing again. But when are you returning to your Q Times game?
Yes, the World of Darkness journey, hosted by B. Dave Walters, begins again next week. We are delving into Mage, the Awakening. And then once we complete, this will be another.
Speaking of feature fatigue,
yeah, there's a lot of features to learn across because just to update everyone, you know, this is a long-standing campaign that started actually a year ago last week. We just hit our 1 year anniversary, and we have been playing basically every World of Darkness system, the same cast across each system. This is our last one to go, Mage the Awakening. And then when we complete this 4-episode arc, we will move into a like best of combo season where every actor is going to be playing their character of choice from the various other World of Darkness campaigns. Really fucking cool. Yeah. I'm not sure yet which one I'm going to do.
Sick.
But yeah, so that starts up again next Friday on Q Times, and it'll always consistently be after this show. So
so you can just like go grab a sandwich and then queue it up.
Yeah.
For another watch. Awesome. You can, as we said earlier, catch VODs of Chris and I playing D&D one-on-one for the Sunlit Seekers campaign, which is the Patreon exclusive campaign that I run for my patrons. So our next game for that is going to be on the 24th of this month, I believe at 5 p.m. Eastern is when we're going to start playing. But yeah, it's going to be great. I'm very, very excited to continue. It's basically a shared MMO style experience, if you want to think about that, or a West Marches style game where everybody can kind of come and go, but the plot advances and threads of mystery are woven through each individual thing. And when Chris and I sat down to play, that was the first time that I had streamed any of it. And it gave a lot of people who've been playing a new view into some of the lore around what's been going on. So I hope that you guys will come check it out. I will throw my Patreon in the chat. Patrons are also the only folks who get the access to the audio exclusively of this show. So if that is the way, your preferred listening or enjoyment method, that's a great way to catch the show as well. And it's available to all Patreon tiers. And that's it, guys. I love you so much. Thank you, Emily and Chris, for coming. I love my dog. Okay, bye.
Bye.